Hello, everyone. I believe my counting's right. We're on episode 309 of 15 Minutes and a Big Idea. It's cool to just continue along, and 300 has came and went. If you haven't had a second, can you rate the podcast? Maybe on your podcast server. If you're there, just 5 stars, hopefully. Let us know what you like about it. It helps other people find it. Also, if you're on Facebook, 15 Minutes and a Big Idea, that Facebook page, some reviews there would really help us out. All these things help the algorithm to get it in front of people, and if it's interesting to you, it may be interesting to people you know. We can continue to edge the circle out a little bit further, and this podcast continues to grow in its influence. It's been somewhat slow, but so thankful for that, and for all of you that are able to participate in helping us make that happen. So any way you're able to contribute and push that forward is such a blessing to me and to the rest of the team working, so thank you so much. Today we're looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 through 3. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 3. If I speak with the tongues of mankind and of angels, but do not have love, I have become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I'm nothing. And if I give away all my possessions to charity, and if I surrender my body so that I may glory, but do not have love, it does me no good. Today we're starting one of my favorite texts in the whole Bible. In fact, kind of as a young person, for whatever reason, the fact that I knew 1 Corinthians 13 was about love is something that goes way back. Of course, if you know much about the Bible, you know 1 Corinthians 13 is the love chapter, which absolutely is what it's about. And if we will sit and reflect and meditate and internalize this, it's absolutely transformative. This text isn't just about gushy feelings, but it presents a standard of love that's absolutely out of this world and should fill us with joy and delight in the love that God has for us. Because when the Bible talks about God loving us, this is the standard by which he acts toward us. Moreover, it should cause us to act with supreme virtue towards others as we observe the upward call of God upon our lives to live for him. Yet, as always, before we can extrapolate and apply and think about what it means for us, we need to take a detailed look at the way that Paul is using and employing this text contextually. Throughout the letter to the Corinthians, the issue of pride and raising oneself up against others is constant. Specifically, Paul calls them back to Christ as the central figure of the faith instead of schismatically rallying around different figures for their own exaltation. Moreover, the issue of knowledge puffing up, but love edifying is in the issue of food offers to idols. It's central there. It demonstrates this attitude along with the abuse of the Lord's Supper of people trying to show their own impressiveness at the expense of others. Most recently, we've observed the issue around spiritual gifts and their abuse in lifting one up above the other. And as we continue, we'll see the gift of languages was used as a source of pride. It's into this context, on the abuse of these spiritual gifts and the raising oneself up against another, that Paul begins this teaching on love, which is the better way that we talked about in our most previous episode. Go back to chapter, I believe, 12. I know it's chapter 12. I believe it's 27 to 31, I think, is the episode there. So check that episode out to launch into this one if you haven't heard that yet. I'm looking forward to continuing to unpack this better way and our big idea, which is love is powerful. Love is powerful. For the next several texts, we're going to see this love is these things. And today, love is powerful. Our supporting ideas are: number 1, languages without love are noise. Number 2, knowledge without love is empty. And number 3, giving without love is vain. Languages without love are noise. Knowledge without love is empty. Giving without love is vain. Languages, knowledge, and giving are going to be these points that drive our thought today. Last time, Paul said that he would show them a better way. And then he begins with this hypothetical: if I spoke with the tongues of men and angels. And he most certainly is calling to mind the spiritual gifting, as we mentioned in verses 10, 28, and 30 of chapter 12 with this languages or this tongues. And with the fact that it's mentioned first here when he notes that tongues are last in the order of gifts given in chapter 12, along with the fact that he extensively, if not exhaustively, declares the superior word of prophecy to tongues in chapter 14. All that together, it seems apparent that the Corinthians had lifted this up. So it's last on the list in 1 Corinthians 12, and he talks about how prophecy is better than it in chapter 14, and here's the first one out of the gate. So it seems that he wants to get them to rightly understand where this gift fits in. Presumably, they had lifted this gift up because someone can speak another language without any teaching on it, that's a very impressive thing to do. Now, we've used the term gift of languages throughout our time here because the word means existing human languages. It's clear that that's what's meant in Acts chapter 2, in Revelation chapter 5, 7, 10, 11, 13, 14, and 17. However, some argue that these tongues are an ecstatic, heavenly language that the human can't understand on its own. And this is the only text that might potentially speak to that. It's the text that's used to justify that because of this notion of the language of angels. And I want to quickly deal with that, think about that, because I think that this text is used wrongly to that effect. And I think setting the record straight on what is this gifting is important for our understanding of what Paul's saying. First, this is the only place where there's any hint of any idea. In every other place the word is used, it makes better sense to think of it as existing languages. Second, in the context of the gifts of tongues, Paul equates spoken languages in the world in chapter 14, verse 10. He's talking about spoken languages that exist, that have meaning, that can be comprehended by people. So that's what we've got going on contextually when he grounds it. He grounds it as that. Third, Paul notes that the gift of languages, tongues, includes human languages, yet those who claim to display that gift today only use the gift of languages of angels. So notice here, if I spoke with the tongues of men and angels, so being able to speak with the tongues of men, being able to speak other existing human languages is part of the gift, and yet today people only use the angelic part of that, which out of loving candor seems conveniently unfalsifiable to me. And then finally, Paul never says that he actually speaks with that or that any person can do that. Rather, he's hypothetically supposing that someone was able to do that. And it makes better sense, given those other facts, to say that he's exaggerating to show just how much better love is. And so if I exaggerate about something that's impossible, I say, oh, I can do this thing that were impossible, and then there's something better than that, it shows you how much better the other thing is. And that's what he's doing here. So to suppose that all of language speaking, this tongue gifts that someone can experience is just this angel language, heavenly language, based on an exaggerative hypothetical when all the other evidence points in the other direction, seems unlikely to me. That seems unlikely. While the question is pertinent to our context, let's not miss Paul's point, though, because that's an important interpretive and applicative question in our context around those assertions. But Paul's point is that even if he could speak every conceivable language, but it doesn't have love, it's just noise. It's a cacophony of futility. So just ignoring the question about the angel languages or those heavenly languages, if someone could speak any language, just boom, they understand it, but they don't speak them with love, it's just noise. It's just noise. We'll continue that in the second point. He says, if I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries, again, to tie back to that previous point, it seems to imply a hypothetical maximalization, not something that's inherently within the scope of the gift. He's saying, if I could do that, as though if I could understand everything, which seems to indicate that these things on this list are some way to maximize, as awesome as this could possibly be, love still better, but not to say I can have all that. By prophecy, knowing all mysteries and having all knowledge, that ties back to the specific gifts we saw in chapter 12, verse 10, which we called gifts of knowledge, and we found a different term that's not nearly so exciting. It's gifts of information. If you wanted to, these prophecies are places where God would speak infallible knowledge of the future with the goal of edification, exhortation, and comfort, as he'll go on to say in chapter 14. The knowledge of mysteries likely refers to spiritual understanding of things that are beyond our understanding without supernatural help. Moreover, the gift of faith seems to refer to God giving someone a unique and notable amount of spiritual resolve and trust in a given situation. And as we think about those gifts, just as they are, as they're given, imagine how valuable these gifts would be to your local church body. If someone just had them, boom, you flip a switch and they're able to have all these things. Imagine if I could tell you what culture is going to look like in 2 years. If 10 years ago I could have made a prediction rightly about what culture was going to look like. Or if you could infallibly predict what would come about by a particular action or an initiative. It's like, okay, we're going to go out and do this way of preaching the gospel, or this way to disciple people. And you're like, I can see the future, and I know this is going to work or it isn't going to work, and here's what we need to change. Or if you could perfectly explain on the knowledge side of things how Jesus is God and man. or how the Father, Son, and Spirit harmoniously participate in the divine identity, or what the book of Revelation means, or if you had faith that so you could endure and move mountains in the difficulty of trials when it seems like everything is telling you to quit and you're able to just hold on a little bit longer in faithfulness. Honestly, if you had those things, I would want you to come to church with me. I'd want you to be a part of the congregation because those abilities would solve some problems for me. I mean, there's problems we're facing in our local church context that would be an incredible value, and yet Paul says, if we don't have love, all that stuff is as empty as a book with no words. There's no true profit. Behold what love can do and how powerful it is to manifest change. Next, Paul says that if he gave all his possessions. The NASB supplies the words to charity. Now, they didn't really have charities as nonprofit tax-exempt organizations like we think of them today, so to charity I think might give us the wrong idea. But the intention and thrust of this is it's given away all my possessions as an act of charity, as a benefactor, especially those who are incapable of returning that generosity. Paul posits the possibility of giving up his body, and then we have a textual issue as to why. The King James Version, and I think New King James famously have give up my body to be burned, whereas here in the NASB, it's I give up my body that I may glory. The difference in the Greek is the words between ch and th and o and o. You may say that sounds pretty similar, and indeed it is. They're very close, and you can just sort of see how the spelling may have happened. I lean towards I love the reading of give my body to be burned because it's just so lay it all on the line. But if I really think about what this is, I think the idea is actually I give my body so that I may glory. And the meaning there is being I liquidate not only my physical assets and give them away, but I sell myself into slavery so that I've got extra money that I can give that away too. Though I think this idea of supreme sacrifice of one's body as the extreme in this hypothetical really works either way. So it's not too particular, but if we had to make a decision, I think that fits the context a little bit better. Regardless of all that, think of the right honor to which we give to people who generously contribute to good works. We esteem them highly. We put their names on buildings and other wonderful things, but most of all, these people are giving so generously, but oftentimes they're giving out of their abundance. Most all of them are giving out of their abundance. They've done well in business. They've done well in investing or something of that nature, and they're able to create accounts that can support that level of giving beyond their expenses. And that's great. And these gifts, for those who have that sort of forethought for churches, have been transformational. And we need people who are generous. You know, Paul talks in terms of spiritual gifts in Romans 12 about the person who gives with generosity, give with liberality. We need those kind of people. But Paul goes one step further. He says, I don't just give out of my abundance, but I give all that I have, even my own life, so that someone else can receive and have a blessing. It's incredible. It's an incredible standard of love, worthy of commendation. But he says, without love, actually, it's nothing. It's nothing. And so we see Paul going through this and showing the power of love to affect and make these things that appear to be of great value. And love is what makes them of actual and real value. As we land the plane here, we've got to be incredibly dense to miss the repetition that's going on here in this text. Paul's elevation of love to the highest degree. Love is the principal thing. And he says, for all the value of these giftings and gifts, if there's not love behind them, then the personal manifesting of them is of no value. Indeed, I've seen people with tremendous gifts who acted absent of love, without love, as was described in this text, and ultimately it led to the harm of people. While Paul encouraged them to desire better gifts as a church community, I think it's right to pray for talented people and people who will use their talents in the right ways, but we must not overlook the power of God to work through the simple faithfulness of love. There have been times people have sold the farm for the talented one in the church because they're the future, when that person didn't have the character of love guiding their heart that was needed to support that talent. Moreover, we need to recognize as part of the body that if we don't act in love, greater talents and gifts will only increase the fallout of our selfishness. Indeed, acting in love makes the greatest positive impact, and doing that regardless of skill level leads to a benefit when we do it right, and acting without love leads to the highest level of destruction. That really the thing that moves the dial is not the gifting or the talent, it's the love, as Paul will go on to describe. So do you use the gifts and abilities that you have with love? Are you pursuing abilities that may be outside of your control and impossible to achieve? Or are you pursuing love that is within your control to have and to share? Does every act you do, even serve or do spiritually, do you do that with a desire to advance your personal brand, your influence or acclaim? What's the purpose behind this? Are you trying to make a splash? Or are you trying to show love in everything that you do for the blessing of other people? Thanks so much for joining us today here at 15 Minutes in a Big Idea. Today's big idea: love is powerful.